Hey guys, my name is Jason Gilmet, and you're listening to UAP Studies podcast. This is actually the first interview of 2024 that I'm doing. Not sure if that's the first one we're releasing. I think it might be the second one. Michael is coming, but for some reason he's not on right now. He's probably being held hostage somewhere today. But today we're going to delve into more of the European side of UFOs, which is really important because we haven't really covered that aspect of ufology. And it's super important because some of the history of UFOs, especially past the 1800s, there's so much that's happened in Europe that we can actually say, hey, this phenomenon's been going on for a long time. We're not going to find any of that really in North America. I think Canada has one sighting that was recorded in 1800s, I should say, late 1800s, but that's the only one that we can find. Today we have Renate who's joining us from Norway. She is a board member in the Norwegian UFO Society, also known as NUFOS. I do believe that's how you pronounce it here. And yeah, she's joining us today. We have a bit of a time difference. It's morning for me, late or evening for her. How you doing today, Renate?
Hi, I'm doing very fine, thank you. Yes, it's 6 o'clock in the evening here, so
Well, it's awesome to have you on. I've been following you on Twitter for quite some time and have seen you pretty much all of you're amongst you're rubbing shoulders with or elbows with all these the big names in ufology. You're following up and you're actually really active. And that's what we want. We want to see people that are doing that because you guys motivate us to get ourselves going as well. But just so we get to know you a little bit better, maybe talk a bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, and what got you into studying the non-human intelligence that we're dealing with.
thank you. Yes, my name is Renate. I come from Norway. I am in NUFOS, this is Norwegian UFO Society in English. It's another word in Norwegian, so I'm trying to not mix those two up.
I'll go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, mix it up. So I'm a board member there. We're not a big community, we're a small community. Norway is only 5 million people. But that's something that we don't have full-time jobs in this. This is not part-time. It's something we do on our spare time. So we
Right.
do what we can with the means that we have, and we also give out a magazine 4 times a year. So
Oh,
I would, of
wow.
course, I would of course, a physical magazine you can hold in your hand actually. So I would of course encourage everyone who's watching who lives in Norway to be a part of our society and pay the I don't know, not tuition, but there's a fee every year. It's very
So it's
very
very similar to MUFON, right?
yeah,
Like we have it here in North America. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. So that's what I do in the NUFOS, and I of course have a normal job as a construction manager, construction project manager, all kinds of different jobs that I can have on construction sites and all that kind of stuff. So I manage projects. That's what I do. And I also have a part-time job in the army,
Oh,
where
nice.
where I'm a captain in the
Wow.
reserves. Yeah. So
I'll
yeah,
give you a salute. That's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a salute. When you don't have a hat, you don't salute. You
Oh,
just
really? Okay. You
yeah.
just
Well, at
head
least in
nod. Yeah.
Norway. At least
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Norway. I'm not sure in America, but
That you guys are a lot more laxed over there than we are over here. Over here, we're sticklers for rules, right? Um,
yeah.
so okay, so you're balancing all this now. I'm guessing, do you have a family? Do you have like engagements that also, because you got a bit of a workload there.
Yeah.
But how do you balance that with your UFO research and your endeavors?
Well, it can be tricky sometimes, but I think also it's important that to know that the UFO endeavor, as you can call it, that's very important to keep that away from the two others. You cannot put that in the military context, and it's difficult and you cannot put it in the work context. So it's very separate
Right.
from the others. But of course, yes, I have a family. I actually have 3 kids under 10 years old. So always, I'm kind of busy. Yeah, I wish I wish the hours were 10 hours more every day. That would be perfect. But
There's not enough hours in a
no, it's
week,
not enough
much less.
hours at
I'm
all.
always amazed at people like yourselves that can tackle on so much and yet still have a smile on your face. I just quit smoking recently and I could bite a puppy in the face. That's how angry I am. It's just, but it's fascinating. Now, one thing that I'm curious about, because you mentioned that you work for the military, is there any conflict of interest there between the military and your private life investigating UFOs?
Um, yes and no. I guess I would say the conflict in that is you have to, it kind of, well, what can I say? It kind of, you have to be aware about what you say and do, I guess.
Right,
Because when you work in the military, you can't just go off criticizing your own employer, your own boss, your own commander. So you have to be careful about that balance. You have to make sure that you don't, yeah, do something that would be embarrassing for people. So I guess there's a balance there. It's not like I can't talk about this or do this research. I'm allowed to do whatever I want on my spare time. But of
right.
course, there's a balance there, and you have to be aware of that, and you can't mix up those two sides of my life. Kind of, you have to keep that separate.
What that's sound advice. As far as the Norwegian army is concerned, do they investigate UFOs, or they leave that more to organizations like NUFOS or independent researchers like yourself?
Well, I don't think they do, to be honest. I don't work in the branch. I would say it's a no topic, I would say. You
Right,
know, in America, in America, there's a topic that you can discuss and you can have, you know, because you have a lot of, not you, you're in Canada, but Americans have a lot of sightings. There's a lot of things going on, so you can discuss and have an open dialogue about this.
right.
But in Norway, nothing really happens when it comes to the military and UFOs, as far as I'm aware. And that's also, I think, one of the reasons why it's just not talked about. So I think if you try to talk about it, it would be you would I think it would be frowned upon. I guess there's
Oh,
still a lot.
really?
Yeah, there's a lot of stigma in Norway, and this is an absolute. You don't really talk about it, like in the military context. And when that's said, I don't know anything. I don't think we actually have any big secrets. We don't. I don't think we know. I don't think it's like we have. Oh, we know all these kind of things, but we're keeping a secret. I don't think so. I just think it's stigma
Yeah,
and few sightings in that context. I mean, we're not a some say, there's a lot of sightings around nuclear weapons and stuff like that, nuclear plants. So we don't have that in Norway. So you can say, is that a reason? I don't know, but there's not a lot of talk going on about that. I would say. The,
right.
the funny thing is, though, actually found a video from the 1990s, and it turned out that there was this captain. No, he was a major. He's dead now, unfortunately, but there was a major who had a job in the military, and he's part-time as one of his jobs in that position that he had was actually investigating UFOs.
Mm,
Yeah, and it was wow, we did actually have that in the 1990s. We did. There was this
that's
guy,
cool.
yeah, I saw him in this documentary, and I was like, oh, where is he? And someone told me I unfortunately passed. But so we did at one point. What we
So,
do have now, I don't think we do. No.
yeah, I would think that the Belgium wave would have sort of stirred things within Europe, and the surrounding countries. Now, you're mentioning that Norway's sort of been the stigma still there with UFOs and non-human technology or presence, if you will. But as far as you know, your understanding, like in Europe, what's the general consensus of the population when it comes down to this subject?
I think it's pretty much the same. I would think, like in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, France. I think it's about the same.
Yeah,
But I think maybe France is a little bit more. They've had some studies. There's this very one famous study. I don't remember the name, but it's pretty old now, 20, 30 years ago. And there were these military officers that made this report. It seemed like it was a government report, but it wasn't. But they had all been working in the government, in the French government, and they made this huge report where it said the conclusion is that UAPs are extraterrestrial technology. So I would say they're one of the they were at least in the front. And of course,
right.
there's the Belgian wave where you had the military in Belgium going out and saying this. They were going out having press conferences, talking about this. This is real. This is not fictitious. This is happening. And so they were during the Belgian wave. They were up in front and center. But I would say like Sweden, Denmark, Iceland. I think it's pretty much the same. We
Yeah.
don't. generally talk about it. It's frowned upon. It's a lot of stigma. So yeah, it's just if you talk about it, it's more likely just, oh, look, there's a plant. Let's talk about that plant
Yeah,
instead.
yeah, yeah.
Just,
Let's just
oh,
talk about anything else but the subject, which is weird
anything else.
because, yeah, one of my biggest influence, and we were just talking before we started recording, is Jacques Vallée, which, when I was a kid and I watched Close Encounters of, the Third Kind, I was French Canadian. I had a really bad accent. I probably still do. I don't know. I can't tell. But Jacques Vallée was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's a French guy. Because usually in American movies, it's always an American that leads the charge. In this case, it was a French guy that was basically Steven Spielberg's homage to Jacques Vallée, right?
Mm,
And I just thought that was cool, but I don't know many other French people besides people maybe in Quebec that are investigating this and have a name in ufology. I mean, it seems to be mostly English speaking people that we hear from, right?
yeah.
Which is it, that's a problem, Renata, because we need to have a like a global awareness of what we're dealing with and
Yeah.
global community. And I think, even part of this podcast was to establish that
Yeah.
all day long, like there's big names, on my phone, and all day long I send them referrals and names and contacts because I want them to succeed. I want them to reach out. Same with
Yeah.
other podcasts. It's very hard in the podcasting world, especially on the UFO side, because
Mm,
they're all competitive. And I'm not going
yeah.
to include myself in that because I get guests, I put them out, and if they reach out to me, they want the guests, I'll give them the info.
Yeah.
But it's hard. I'm not going to get that from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can tell
Yeah.
there's still that I need to be the one that breaks the news.
Mm,
And especially now, like what's going down in the States is that you got people that are trying to be the one that's going to bring disclosure,
mm,
right? And people know who I'm talking about, but it's frustrating because there's
mm,
not going to be that one person. It's a group, it's a global effort. That whole thing of being the hero of or the champion of the cause, that's not going to happen. It cannot happen.
mm,
It needs to be talked about as much as we can. And the people that are coming out, the whistleblowers, should not sign exclusives. Because then what happens is that networks get exclusives for those interviews to get the hits and the views.
mm,
And then they don't allow these people to come on and talk to us,
mm.
smaller podcasters, about what's
Okay.
going on, right?
Yeah.
So this is going on right now because you can see it's like big business that's building up, right? People are making money from this, and there's a good reason why they're doing what they're doing. But again, it's human nature, the corruption in our nature to make money, to be the one that everybody looks up to.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody all the time, I'm just a normal person. Do not look up to me, but pay attention to what the guests are saying. This is the point. Is
Mm,
just to educate ourselves, not to promote ourselves as I'm the champion of disclosure or
yeah.
ufology, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the mindset in North America. But
Mm.
in your area of the world, for those who are studying this, like, are you guys working well together?
I guess I would say that in Norway, the community is so small that there's really not any competition going on
Okay,
because we have NUFOS and that's mostly it.
right.
Yeah, that's it. And then you have Sweden. I know that they have like a NUFOS, but it's actually bigger and
Okay,
I think it's more organized and it's been around for a couple of more years than ours, I think.
right,
So
right.
it's a bigger community in Sweden. But I don't. We don't have any. You don't. We don't actually have any podcasts about this topic in Norwegian. So we don't
Oh,
have any.
really?
No, we don't. It's nothing.
You need to start one. It's
Yeah.
on you now. It's
Yeah,
on you
I know.
now. Yeah, yeah.
People have said that, but I'm not quite sure. Well, I'll see about that. But yeah,
It's
I would have to speak Norwegian just to have a different, spin on it because a lot of podcasts are already there and they're speaking English. So yeah, we'll see. So
and
there's
with
not a lot of competition in Norway when it comes to this topic, though.
I was going to say with Chat GPT, Renata, you probably would have the Chat GPT translating everything for you anyways.
That's
You know what I
true.
mean? So
That's
that's it's
true.
coming. It's coming.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
it's definitely. I mean, I've noticed the podcasting stuff is mostly like a North American thing. I mean, they're popping up
Yeah,
everywhere. There's some like 4 million podcasts in the world. 4 million. That's
that's a
crazy.
lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, but in your country, that's a niche. That's a niche
Yeah,
thing. Talk about UFOs. Like you could definitely be very successful if you started that for sure.
Yeah, maybe,
We need
yeah,
one in every country. We'll branch
yeah,
out. You'll be the UAP studies
yeah,
of Norway. How about that?
yeah, yeah. It's so
So I was doing my research on this, but first, before we get into the Norway incidences, something got you
Mhm.
interested in investigating this. Obviously, you're a very intelligent person. For the work that you work for the government, you work for construction, and it's amazing. But something triggered you to get into this. Could you explain to us what it is that drove you to become an investigator?
I think that I cannot pinpoint one exact episode or something that happened. Actually, this is I've always been interested since I was a kid. I guess always interested in the things that we don't talk about.
Right.
What is this? It's we can't talk about it, or it's like stigma around it. And I've always been attracted to things that I guess to look at things from a different perspective. Okay, so people say this, no, it's we don't talk about it, and I'm thinking, really, why not? So I guess I have that kind of inquisitive spin on things, and I want to look at it from my own perspective. So I've always been interested in this. What is this? So I cannot say this happened and that's why I'm interested. I wish there was. I wish I saw, wow, so this huge UFO, it changed my life. Unfortunately, not. It was just me always being interested. And of course, time passes, things happen in your life, and interest goes up and interest goes down, and it went on like this. And then after 2017, when I realized and I saw this episode, with Luis Elizondo and uh, Stars, the Academy to the
Oh yeah,
Stars.
yeah, yeah. To
Yeah,
the stars. Yeah.
yeah, that documentary that went on TV. I don't remember the name of it, but when that came on, and I saw that, and I was like, I need to get into this again. Of course, I've always thought this is really interesting, and I saw that, and after that, I couldn't look back. That was it for me. When I saw that, and I thought, there's really something to this. So many credible witnesses. How can you look at this and say no, it's nothing? And I went, I gotta investigate. And then I went on YouTube and I found Need to Know podcast, and it
Right.
kept
Great
talking about
podcast.
Twitter all the time. And I was like, oh, Twitter, do I really need to? And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go in there, and that's where I started Twitter, because that's Bryce and Ross's.
Brutal that you jumped into Twitter.
Yeah,
Did you know what you were getting into? Yeah,
no, not really.
it's brutal. It's
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah,
But
but I don't tend to look at the brutal things. I just swipe. I don't. I guess
yeah,
that's kind of thing that I would recommend to people. Just if you give attention to things, it will grow. So if you
yeah,
give attention to negativity and all that kind of chaos, it will grow for
right.
you and you. So when I see it, I'm not blind, but I try to just swipe away. Yeah.
I find that there's people that post really good content. The one I think this week, we're recording this on January 7th, but this week there's the whole Miami police incident, and everybody's, oh, there's a 9 foot tall alien, and that's what like
Yeah.
the
So
problem that I have with this, Renata, is that people post black and white, either video footage, and big names are equally important in this because they do it themselves. But they release things that, like, you're looking at the computer, like, what am I looking at?
what is
And you
it?
need somebody to describe to you what you're looking at. That is not self-evident. And as far as I'm concerned, that's dismissible. It's not good, solid investigation, right? Like, oh, the rumors. And I talked to a guy who was downtown. He was homeless. I'm like, oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
when we do investigations, especially with MUFON, there's tiers that they classify people. Like if you're an engineer, you have a higher credibility score than somebody who's homeless, right?
Mm. Mm.
Um, but the thing is that people don't factor that in anymore. They just take it for what it is. Somebody posts them on it, and all of a sudden it spreads like a wildfire,
Mm.
and it hurts our
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
yeah, it hurts ufology. It's not a good thing, right?
Yeah, and I think that the reason why is because I've thought about this and contemplated a little bit about it, and it's when you have a topic that you're interested in, information keeps coming in. If you're interested in cars, new information is going to come out. This car is coming out, this airplane is coming out, there's a new fishing rod or whatever. There's always something new coming up. And in this topic, you have these huge voids of nothing.
Mhm.
And that's the reason why there's so many things going into this topic that's not really interesting, or it's just like you say, hyped up really big, because there's nothing. So you
Yeah.
have people with all this energy, all this need to know, want to know, and they're really engaged in this topic. And then there's a void, nothing. And then it's really boring. And then people are like, what are we going to do? What are we going to say? And then that kind of those things trickle down, and you get all these nothings out of very small things. And that's sad, but it's a bit understandable as well, because you have these huge nothing periods where nothing's
Yeah.
happening. So, and what do people? You get a bit desperate. You want to talk about it. You want to engage because you're interested. You're so interested. And then the smallest things that just becomes huge topics. So, yeah.
And I think with a lot of people, they focus on only the big news. They never focus on the smaller stuff, right? Like just educating yourself on maybe subjects or topics, cases that you have never known before. You could do
Yeah.
that in between the big chunks. But one thing that, I tell people all the time on Twitter, especially if they're, really well known in the sense of like sharing things, is don't jump on the bandwagon right away. Even if the news breaks out, you don't need to do an episode that night, say, hey, this happens, because people will eventually go, this guy's wrong about everything. He jumps on everything. And there's no analysis of the situation. Like for me, I look at a video and it'll take me like 2 weeks to make up my mind on whether or not this is real, because I'll investigate it. I'll ask questions. One video came out on Twitter, and I posted it like, is this real? And then people just, oh, you're an idiot and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm asking. I'm not saying this is real. I'm asking you if anybody knows anything about this. And like I said, just that attacking all the time, that's why we notice Twitter is not necessarily the best place for, talking with everybody, but it's actually really good for knowing about people that I've never known about, yourself
Yeah.
included, because there's people that put out logical things out there that should be reviewed, and they're not getting the attention that they deserve because the whole system's flooded, like you said, with nonsense, right? There's tons of videos that have been proving time and time again to be fake, and yet they show up again. Some guy's like, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
And I fall for it too, Renate. Like whenever there's like a
Yeah.
fake vid, I've fallen
Yeah.
for so many of them. I get so mad at myself, and
No.
then I get mad at them for making.
I've probably done it myself once
Yeah,
or twice. I've seen a video and I was like, oh, it's really interesting. But what I do, at least, I don't say this is real.
yeah,
Sometimes I post like an emoji when you're thinking, because I'm thinking about it. What is this? I'm interested, but I try to stay away from being 100% certain about anything,
yeah.
because very few people are 100% certain about anything about this topic. So I'm trying to stay out of this. I know 100%, because that's not very smart in this topic. You have to, I think, is something we should say a lot more, or in my opinion, because that's what it is. A lot
Yeah.
of the time, it's just our own opinion.
It
Yeah.
is, and it's hard. It's hard. Human nature being what it is, we'll always
Yeah.
throw in our opinion in with. I'm guilty of that myself as much as anybody else. Before we get into some of the sightings and events that have taken place in Norway, I'm curious. I'm really focused on studying, for my own personal reasons, the abduction phenomenon. But I'm just wondering in Norway if that's a thing that's even talked about, or is it something that's just like taboo that nobody ever talks about?
We never talk about this at all.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, UFOs, it's a lot of stigma. Of course, we have there's online site places, and you can talk about it and such, but I don't do that much. But people who there's stigma around it, and people who talk. I've never heard about actually an abduction case in Norway. But that being said, I don't actually look for it. This is not something I look for. I spend a lot of time doing.
Hmm.
But I have to say, I haven't really heard about that. So I think it's rare, and it's not talked about, unfortunately. It's or fortunately, if
Hmm.
people are being abducted, that's I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But no, it's not a big thing here at all. Like
Yeah. So,
UFOs, not big.
but socially, like in like the culture of Norway, if
Mm.
I was there and I was like, hey, I got taken last night, like how would I be received? What's the
I guess if you were in contact with our organization, we would listen to you, and we would ask you questions, and we would
okay.
document it. Nobody in our organization would go like, "Oh, you're lying," or whatever. We would, of course, listen to you. But I mean, there's really nothing you could do except talk to us, talk to your friends and family. I mean, if you went to the police, they'd go like, "Oh, okay, write a report and never hear from us again. So it's just not talked about. And that's also one of the reasons actually why I'm so interested in this. One thing is like the nuts and bolts and the future and all that kind of stuff. But what about the injustice that's happened to so many people? Can you imagine if abductions are real? I'm not saying I'm not 100%, but I'm very up close to this is probably a thing that's going on. Okay, let's say it actually happens. Think about all those people and the experiences that they've had and how the injustice that they feel that they're being conflicted and they can't talk to anybody and they go to a shrink and they're like, oh, you're crazy. It kind of irritates me. It gets me frustrated and a little bit angry because I think it's a huge injustice to so many people. And yeah, so that's also kind of fires me up a little bit. Like, oh, I don't like it when people experience things, see things, and they're being ridiculed and stigmatized and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a huge thing, and a lot of things are going to be happening about that. If disclosure happens, can you imagine all the people coming forward saying things? Wanted to talk to the government, you didn't believe me, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, well.
And you got to think how many people experience this that have never said anything, that is just
Yeah.
in the woodworks.
Mm.
The whistleblowers coming out and saying, look, we have non-human biological entities.
Mm.
That proves that within these crafts is intelligent life, right?
Mm.
Now, to what extent, we don't know. But if somebody says, I saw a craft and I saw entities, now you cannot dismiss either one. They both come together.
Mm.
And this is the part, is that we have to assemble this to the public with what's happening right now. We're talking about disclosure. We're saying, hey, these things are in the sky, they're in space, they're in the water. Yes, but they're also in your bedrooms, right? We were talking to a bunch of people in the CIA and military, and they wake up in the middle of the night and they have 3 little guys or 5 little guys in their bedroom, and the next day they know they're taken. So this is happening to the military personnel, the defense contract personnel, the same as it's happening to us, the civilians. So when this comes out of the bag, it's like, I think we're decades away from the media covering that aspect. I think we need to first accept that they're here. That's priority number one. Now, it's not for you and I to accept. We've already accepted it, but it's for the general population, because to them, it's almost like a religion, right? Like you're imposing a religion on them. Like, let me talk,
Yeah.
like I'm knocking on doors. Can I talk to you about our Lord
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Savior,
yeah,
the UFOs, right?
yeah.
But that's not the case. And people need to know that it's not about a religion. It's not about a faith. It's not about a system. It's about, there's something going on and something's not right. We all know this. We all sense that something's not right. It doesn't add up. And that's really where we're at, I think, in 2024. Is just, it's public awareness is what we're doing more than anything else,
Yeah,
is just waking up the masses to, there's more than just your 9 to 5 job.
yeah,
There's more than just Netflix. There's something above your head every night. You're not
yeah.
aware of it.
But also one thing that's very important because that's also one of the things that I'm very interested in, and one of the things that I would want to happen is that, like you said, more people are interested in this, more people will engage in this topic,
Yeah.
more people will have their eyes open to, oh, this is actually something. And what we have to do and what we have to be careful about is not pulling them directly into the rabbit hole, because I want more people involved, and I want scientists involved. I want politicians. I want military personnel. I want, all those kinds of people. I want them interested in this topic. And that's also one of the reasons why I try to stay a little bit away from the woo. If you go and talk to people and your goal is to get these people interested in this topic, to actually play a part in this disclosure, this opening of information, I would just encourage people not to go like all the way into the rabbit hole, because you have to start at the right place. That's why I stay away from, time travel and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's wrong, and I'm not dismissing people who talk about this. I'm just saying, if you want people to be engaged in this topic, you cannot go up to people and go like, aliens and time travelers and interdimensional and that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I try to stay on the ET topic because my goal is to get more people involved in this. And people have to start at the right step. You can't jump 10 steps up and go like, you want to come up with me. You have to start at the right place. So that's just something I think about a lot. That's why I'm trying to keep it more extraterrestrial, that kind of nature.
You know, you just said something really wise there. That's actually really good advice. If you're going to introduce the subject to somebody, ease them into it. It's almost like dating, right? You go on a date. You don't propose on the first date, right? Like you got to build it up. That's good. That's really good advice, actually. I try to do the same. Like if I meet somebody, I don't throw them into the woo, even though they ask me questions. I'm just like, pace yourself, like we don't like to go there just yet. But yeah, some people just jump right into it. And then before you know it, your eyes are cross-eyed. You're like, I can't. I've met people that every theory, like Project Bluebeam and everything's all thrown in. And I can't make sense of how they came up to that conclusion. But everybody's different. Now, I was researching Norway UFO incidences on Google, of course. Not that I could find, everything on it, but there's some good cases. Now, obviously, the big one is the Hessdalen. Is I pronouncing that correct? The Hessdalen? Hessdalen, yeah. This is really cool because it started in 1981, which is when I was born. So it got my attention there. And it was just a series of sightings. People would see these orbs in the sky, sometimes one, sometimes multiple. And they would do maneuvers in the sky. They were quiet. They never made any sound. And this is a small town. There's it's in the southern part of Norway, or at least closer to the south of Norway. But interestingly, because I've started noting this pattern, it used to be a former mining town, right? There's iron and there's something else there as well. I think it's copper. Some people had considered, well, maybe the iron and copper, if you mix it in with sulfur, if it's in the water, would create some sort of ionized, electricity. It's like a battery, right? It's like a charged battery. But I heard the scientist who was investigating saying, even if that was the case, you would only get 1 volt out of that. You would not be able to get the voltage that you would need to create those lights. Plus, the electricity would go off every once in a while whenever these lights would appear. So, could you tell us a little bit about this case or what you know of the case so far?
In Hessdalen? Yeah, well, in Hessdalen, it's not just one case, it's continuous cases.
Okay.
So many years ago, there were a lot of sightings in Hessdalen. I'm not an expert in Hessdalen, by the way, but a lot of people have seen a lot of things there. Lights in the sky, moving around, all that kind of stuff, like orbs and such. But also some people have said that they've seen craft, genuine craft. And sometime in the 2000 or prior, they set up this booth with a camera. So that's a continuous, you can go online, I think, and find it. And there's a camera that's always been, that's there and filming and direct live. So, and sometimes they see these orbs and they see these lights. And some people say that it might be some kind of scientific phenomena that occurs naturally because of, like you said, the different materials and such in this area. And other people say, no, it has to be some kind of craft or some kind of intelligence. And the conclusion is still there that we don't know yet.
Right.
And I will not come. And so it's still ongoing. That booth is still there. People are still trying to investigate and trying to find out what it is. Someone said it had some kind of similarities to Skinwalker Ranch. I wouldn't say that, but it's still like an area where there's things happening that they can't really understand. But it's mostly lights in the sky. So personally, for myself, I do not know what the answer is. I would like to say, it's UAPs, it's a non-human intelligence, but I'm not sure about that. I'm thinking maybe it is some kind of natural phenomena. However, also there are cases where they see these move in ways that they cannot explain. And also, it's a bit funny when you read the report from 1980 something. It says, whenever we need the equipment the most, it fails on us.
Yeah.
When they're trying to film it, whenever we need it the most, it fails. And the conclusion says it happens so often that we think it's important to have it in our study. And I was like, I've seen that somewhere before, but I'm not sure. I don't have a conclusion on that. And also, if people have seen craft there, you can also have something that's going on naturally in an area, and someone would, this is interesting, and come over with their craft and have a look at it and go past. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're always there, but I'm not sure. So it's a big question mark. I've been there twice. actually.
Oh, really?
I was actually in my engineering school. The people who have this booth, who have this project, they were actually two teachers at my engineering school. So for some reason, I don't know why, but apparently I've, told people I'm interested in this. So someone asked me, do you want to come up to the science cap? So I was there as a science cap, sitting on top of that container and looking at, these spectrometers and going like, I didn't understand anything, but I was an engineer. So I was like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, the
You
spectrometer.
just hit on yeah.
I didn't
Classic,
see,
classic.
yeah, really good. I didn't see anything, unfortunately. The funny thing is, though, when I was there, a Discovery Channel was there and had a documentary. So the funny thing is that they mixed the tape up so it looks in the documentary. I'm in the documentary for 2 seconds, and it looks like I'm actually seeing something. So you see me
Yeah, they
pointing
do
up at the
that.
sky, and they say, "Oh, we saw something," and I was like, "No, I didn't," but they mixed it up. So
They do that, unfortunately. It's yeah. Even I was whenever I do a shoot or two for if it's a documentary or a show, like you could tell it's set up, right? Like they
yeah,
got it's scripted.
yeah.
Was one of your professors Erling Strand by any chance?
Yes, he was not my professor, but he was at the school. I didn't have any classes with him, but yeah, it was Ali's class. Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, he's been investigating this for quite some time.
Mm.
The only thing that I think about these orbs, which is weird, is one, the maneuverability of some of them, like the way that they move, is not the way ball lightning would normally work, or even if it was an ionized something, it would just go up and maybe be there for a bit and then dissipate. But these would stay there for minutes,
Yeah.
half an hour on end, and then they move, which I've not seen anything in nature. I mean, I know I'm 42 years old and I've never seen anything do that in nature. So if I
Mm.
was to see that, it'd be like, oh, wow. But the odds of me seeing that repeatedly is impossible. And supposedly back in the 1980s, till 81 or something, it was over 20 sightings a week. 20 sightings a week.
Mm.
Like if it was ball lightning, whatever, like you would have the conclusion to what it is by now. But the fact that we
Yeah.
still don't know,
Mm.
the fact that it was affecting the power lines every once in a while whenever they popped up, and the way that they move, just it warrants more inquiry. And some people are quick to dismiss it because they don't want to. It's got to be a logical explanation. We all do that, right? If you can't
Mm.
explain it, you come up with some sort of theory to make you sleep at night. But in this case, what I found interesting is that mines are a huge, especially with these resources, are a huge spot for these orbs.
Mm.
My sighting when my brother and I we had a really close encounter. It was in a small mining town,
Yeah.
and I talked to miners, and miners at night see them all the time. They
Mm.
follow the mining trucks on these dirt roads. There's a It's a very rich like sediment deposits in a wetlands that's about like half an hour away from me, right?
Mm.
A lot of minerals. The orbs show up there too. So
Okay.
there is a connection between mines, natural resources, and the orbs. The
Mm.
crafts show up later, but it seems like the orbs almost like a recon of what resources are there. And Renata, it makes sense. Like if you're from somewhere else and you need to build something, you're going to get the resources from where you're from. Like if we go to Mars, we're going to get our resources from Mars. We're not going to come back to Earth and grab some stuff to go back to Mars. Like we have to make do with what we got. I mean,
Mm.
eventually when we're
Yeah.
settled there, but it's the same thing for them. If they need anything, they will just go and get it where they can on the planet. There's plenty of resources. So mines are a huge point of interest now for me because I noticed that nobody's talking about that, like
Mm.
the minerals, that really important things, even with forestry or parks. I don't know. Norway is beautiful, by the way. Saw pictures on, I'm like, wow, just phenomenal. But it's always those locations that have the most sightings.
I'm just when you said Norway is beautiful, you seen that Guide to the Hitchhiker?
Yes.
Yeah, in that movie we won an award.
Okay. It
God,
was filmed
God,
in. It was filmed
yeah,
there.
no, I'm just joking. God, in the movie, God makes Norway gives them an award because it was so
Oh,
beautiful.
gotcha. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was just a joke
I,
in the movie. Yeah.
yeah, I gotcha. Yeah. That's actually I like that movie was actually really good. I'm just starting to read the book now, but yeah, it's quite clever.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it's always the nature mountainous areas too. And this city has done. I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it's in a valley that has a lot of hills and mountains. Which again, it's like there's common dots now that we're starting to put together. That there seems to be definitive places that you could, if you just park your butt for a little bit, you'll spot something. And that's very interesting because I know about the nuclear facilities and the rocket facilities. That's great. But those spots for us, people that don't have access to Area 51, are good places for us to spot these things and investigate. And you're right. The faulty equipment, constant. Every person that films these things or is a location where these things are active, all the equipment fails, no matter how much you charged the battery. It could be a trusted piece of equipment that you've always had, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, right?
It's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's electromagnetic,
Something.
interference or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Difficult to say. Yeah.
We wish we had more answers than what we do.
Yeah, we should get more.
Yeah. So, but I was looking at this too. So, there was also a scientist from, is it Bologna, that also investigated this as well. So this, and you mentioned the U.S. showed up. The CIA even had an article on what took place there. So the CIA, since the 1950s, of course, is following up on everything. But they leaked it. Of course, it's out. And I thought that was interesting because they're keeping tabs even on Norway, right? Like, you would think, okay, Russia or whatever, but the fact they're still watching you guys means they're watching everybody, right? When it comes down to crash UFOs, Norway's had none?
None.
None, eh? They're trying to get you now. They're trying to get you now.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you now.
So they'll crash UFOs and nothing in the sense of revolutionary, like nobody's, as far as you know, reverse engineering or anything like that. Like, Norway's pretty much neutral, I guess, on that point, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There is one case, but it has been not debunked, but it has been, well, this is debunked the right word. It has been debunked actually from people in my own organization many years ago in the 90s.
Okay.
And that was in Svalbard. There was a case where someone in a German newspaper said that a UFO crashed in Svalbard. It was actually just an anonymous article in a German newspaper. So it's really old. It's a really old case. And a lot of investigation, a lot of rumors going on. But I have not done a lot of inquiries into this because people in NUFOS many years ago did an extensive research on this, and they came to the conclusion that it was not true. It was just hearsay and such. Right. But that's the closest one we have. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was even your history of your country, though. The gentleman, I think it was Erling Strand that said this, but he's found stories from predating the 1800s, at least one. He found a few stories in the 1800s, and then he found 5 stories of the 1900s of events that took place in the city we were just mentioning in there that I keep butchering, Hessdalen. So he says that these occurrences have been happening there, for, as far as we know, centuries. Yeah. So it's a reoccurring thing. And if it's scientific, I think we would have solved it by now. Like, we would have had some sort of theory at least. The fact that we don't have theories concerning.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It is an interesting place. It is.
Is it still active though?
It is, but I think I think that there are less sightings now than it was before. You can actually go online and look up. There's a link. I don't remember the name, but you can go. You can go in there and you can see every sighting that has been occurred since the 1990s or something. And you can see some years there's like 10, and then the next year is 3. I think last year was like 2. So it's very variable. Right. So if you go up there, I don't think you can actually go up there and anticipate to actually see something. But it's said that in the wintertime, it's more common. In the wintertime,
winter's more common. Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you noticed a cyclical pattern at all? Like, do they come in, like, it's like every 5 years there's more activity, or every 2 years there's more activity?
In Hessdalen? No, I haven't seen anything like that. No, but again, I'm not an expert. I have not gone very deep into the Hessdalen. I haven't.
I'll tell you something that I caught on to, but if you ever notice it every decade, but whenever it falls on the seventh of the decade, so 1947, you have Kenneth Arnold, you got the crash at Roswell, right? 1957, other 1967, other 1977 was a huge year for Star Wars. We have Terry Lovelace abduction story. You have the what's his face? Well, 2 years prior was Travis Walton incident. In 1977, there was a bunch of Brazilians that were being attacked by these orbs that were zapping them, causing them to be anemic. 2 people died from that. There was a body that was found supposedly after a UFO sighting, mutilated, of course. 1987, 1997, you're looking at the Phoenix Lights, right? 2017, we got the big news coming out from the New York Times about so it's like every decade, whenever it falls on the seventh, even though you got guys like John Ramirez says that in 2027, something big's happening, there's a pattern there, right? So I'm just saying, look into it for yourself and see if there's anything there. But I noticed that every decade, whenever it falls on the seventh, there's something big that happens. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll write an article about that, right? Look of all the cases on that specific timeline. But even for the listeners, if you guys want to look that up and let me know what you find, that'd be great because I think I'm onto something. Okay. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as somebody who wants to do what you do, and we'll talk about NUFOS here in 2 seconds, but somebody who wants to do what you do in Norway, how do they get active? What would you recommend that they do?
Become active in Norway.
Yeah, as an investigator.
Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing you have to do is contact NUFOS, and you have to become a participant. You have to pay the yearly sum. It's about, I don't know, $40 or something. It's not that much.
Reasonable, yeah.
So I guess that's what you have to do, and then you have to contact us through our email, which is, I don't remember in my head right now, but you can find it online. It's not that difficult. So I guess, and then you can just say, you're interested, you want to contribute, you want to join our meetings, you have some ideas. Can we talk about this? Can I join the meetings that we have, our yearly or two times a year, our meetings that we have when we meet in physical? And just say you want to contribute, and we will be really glad for that. But yeah.
Beautiful. And with MUFON, I know that when you want to become a field investigator, like they give you a book and there is an exam, like they're not just going to give everybody a certificate as field investigators. But do you guys have something set up like that yet? Or are you guys doing more like on-hands training?
They did before.
Yeah.
I know that they did before. I have not been to NUFOS for many years. I've only been there for 1 year. I know that they did this prior, as many years ago, because what I've heard is that earlier years ago there were more sightings. People called in and had sightings, and we went out and investigated. For some reason, that's really not happening anymore. There are really not that many sightings. So we could have investigators, but there's so few cases that we really don't need it, unfortunately. So when it comes to this topic, I would want to live in America, so I could. There would be a lot more
action going on over here. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. A lot more action going on. Not that much in Norway, unfortunately. So yeah, you could become a field investigator, absolutely. But I cannot, we cannot promise that you're actually gonna get a lot of action. So to say it in that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not Tinder for UFOs. Let's just put it that way.
No, Norway is not a hot spot.
Yeah, I was talking with a gentleman, and he lives in South Korea. It was MUFON. He says Korea has absolutely no reports. They never see UFOs in Korea. And I'm like, how is that possible? They're seen everywhere. He goes, not here.
No. So you have to then you start to thinking, is that a quality sign or is it not a quality sign?
Yeah, good point.
What does that mean? No, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Yeah. It's either they're leaving them alone or they're not paying attention, or I don't know. But I thought it was weird because you think, and I mentioned that to him too. Like if you're South Korea, you're watching out North Korea like all the time, right? So you're watching your sky in case there's any rockets.
Yeah, that's true.
But he says, no, there's nothing.
No.
How's that possible?
It can have to do with, it can be stigma. It can't just be stigma. And it can also be that there are just few sightings and few, going on over there. But it can also be just stigma, because when you look up at the sky and you see something weird and you're not interested in this topic and nobody else is talking about it, the only people that's talking about it are people you look at as fringe, or no, I don't want to hear about it. So I guess when you see something and you don't want to see it, you just ignore it, I guess. So I think there are people who do that as well. They see something and it's really weird, but they go like, what am I going to do with this information? Well, who am I going to contact? Who am I going to talk to? And then they choose to just go, no, never happened. So I think that happens also here in Norway, and it's probably in South Korea as well.
Like cultural appropriation or cultural, because we have where I live here, we have a huge Punjabi population, a huge Cantonese and Mandarin population as well. Like we're talking in millions. But the problem is that when I spoke with a lady who's local and she does hypnotherapy for people that have had alien abductions, she has Punjabi clients. She has people from Mandarin or Cantonese, but they never talk to their families about what they have. They only talk to her. So they're suffering because if I equate it to, when the Me Too movement happened, imagine if you're a Me Too victim and nobody believes you and nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
Right. And it keeps happening to you, but nobody cares. Right. It's the equivalent of that. People think, oh no, you're going through extremes. Like, no, it's not. If you're in a home and something takes you from your home and does something to you somewhere else, you just got violated. Right. You can't call the cops. You're not going to call the military. And like, who do you tell? It's a lonely life. These people wake up and have to go to work the next morning and face their coworkers, and like they live a double life. This is the part that my heart, John Mack was a huge influence on me, and his heart, his compassion is what I want to do. Like you have to hear them out, even if they may be delusional or mentally ill. They're still suffering. Something happened to cause a post-traumatic stress, and it is post-traumatic stress. You could prove it by their mannerisms, the way they live. Like there's something caused that to happen. Now, whether it's a mental illness or psychedelic experience or who knows what, but if it's real, if this is really happening to them, then these people need help, like ASAP, right?
Yeah, it's really horrifying if it is true, which I'm leaning towards it's being true. It's just horrendous how, what do you do? I mean, can you imagine having that experience and nobody to talk to? It's crazy. I saw this. It's funny but sad at the same time. I saw this guy who was interviewed, and he said he was abducted by aliens, but he was kind of very down to earth. So he was like looking into the camera and going like, "They're criminals. They're criminals."
Yeah.
That was funny and sad because you never hear that word. But he was
it's good. It's refreshing.
They went into my home. They took me. They were criminals. And I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. I'm not saying, let's go to war. Everything's evil. That's not what I'm saying. But clearly, if someone's being abducted from their home, it's not okay. You got to address that.
According to our laws, I mean, if I was to break into your home, take you out of your home, do medical experiments on you, bring you back, I just committed like a huge felony, right? Like I'd be going to prison.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything about something that nobody believes is happening in the first place.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And that's also very interesting because I have a friend that I met at a Seoul conference. Yeah, at Seoul. And he was like, he started this organization called Unhidden, I think. Yeah, unhidden.org or something.
Okay.
And he talked about exactly that thing because he was trying to get psychiatrists to get into this group and talk about this. If this happens, what and if disclosure happens, who's going to talk to people? Who's going to say, yeah, NHI are here? Some people, not necessarily you and me, are going to take this very bad. Not many. I'm not saying it's going to be chaos as everyone, but some people are going to take this very bad. Who are they going to talk to if no psychiatrists are even in on this? And they're as scared as you, or they're as, their minds are blown. Who are they going to talk to? So that's a very smart idea about talking to psychiatrists, getting them into the topic, and maybe like, okay, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but what if it is? How would you talk to clients coming into you after disclosure, or people who have been abducted? So it's very interesting. I really like that idea that he has. So he's trying to contact psychiatrists. So if anyone's psychiatrist, wanting to get into this, you need to look to Unhidden. It's in England though. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're
But
right.
it's
Like
really interesting. Yeah. It because and that's something they talked about also at the not the soul, but yeah, unfortunately, I mixed those two now. Unfortunately, the Unhidden man, I met him at the Echo conference in Paris. But at the Soul conference, I was also there. And it was really interesting because they kept talking about the platform being laid out and being ready for disclosure. And I think that's really interesting as well, because
right.
if there's going to be disclosure, if it's disclosures happening, if it's going to happen, the platform has to be somewhat in order. It has to be laid out, you know, all
Yeah.
the
You have
people
to have a
talking.
game plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to have a game plan, like what's going to happen. So I really like that idea. And there was a lot of talk about that at the Soul Foundation. What is this? What does this mean, and what kind of platforms do we have to have in place for this to happen, so we can make this a good process? And that's
Right.
something that I'm really interested in. Like, how do we make this a good platform, and so that it will be a good process and not a catastrophic one, as they would like to
Well,
say on Twitter.
teamwork to make the dream work. Like it's an
Yeah,
expression, right? Like you have to work as a team. Was
yeah.
there anything like in their plan? Like, do they mention anything on the abduction or entity interactions that people are having? Or is that at all on the agenda?
At the Soul Foundation,
Yeah.
it was not at the agenda at all.
Okay.
But the funny thing was that Jack Valet, he went up and he was like, the abductions, what about that? So it was a bit
I love
awkward.
Jacques. Yeah.
It was a bit awkward because he was just asking a question. And like you said, when he starts talking, he talks a lot. So I could see everyone was like, okay, Jacques, you've now talked for 5 minutes. It was just going to be a question, but it's his passion and he's really interested in it. So it was really nice to hear him talk about it. But he was raising up his hand and going, well, it's not everything about this is nice, you know, disclosure, the military, all of these kinds of things. But what about the abductions? You haven't mentioned it with one word.
Yeah.
And but I remember, I think it was Carl Nell who said that, you know, you have to start at one point.
Yeah.
He was kind of like, we're not dismissing it, but we have to start at the right place, and that's right. You know, you have to start the first stepping stone. You can't go into Congress. You know, abductions. You go military interests or national threat. That's what you do. That's where you start off.
Yeah.
So he was trying to
Start with the fear factor and then
yeah,
work your way down, right?
yeah.
But
So
it's weird too, because I mean, in MUFON had statistics that 1 in maybe 10 people that witness something will submit a report to an agency like yours or MUFON or whatever. That's only 1 out of 10 people that have sightings.
yeah.
Roper poll in the 1990s in the States had come up with that they thought that about 2% of the world's population are abductees.
Mm.
That's a
That's a lot.
shitload of people. Yeah.
I
And
hope
it,
that's not true. That's a lot of
yeah,
people.
but you know, they're saying like 1 out of every 50 people. This is back in the 90s. So he said 1 out of every 50 people is an abductee, 1 out of 50. So that means if you're in a bus full of people, every bus in the world, if you were to put everybody in the bus, every bus in the world would have somebody that's an abductee.
Mm.
But now we have to factor in that this was taken in a 1990s Roper poll, right? It's a lot more people would probably be a lot more honest now. So we're probably looking maybe closer to 2% or 2 people out of every bus, if you will, that are part of, be more than 2%, but it's 2 people out of every bus, if you will, that are abductees. That's a huge deal. That is huge,
I hope
right?
that's true. That's a lot of people. I don't think if it happens, I don't think everybody remembers it though. Do you think that many people would remember it? No,
No,
I don't
no,
think
they're
so.
good at what they do. They,
No.
the thing is, if they've been around for centuries or millennia, they know the light spectrum that we can see. So they operate outside of it, right? If they know what frequencies we can hear, they operate outside of it. You don't want to be seen, you don't want to be heard, operate outside the boundaries of what the animal can actually see, right? It's equivalent to a mole. Like a mole doesn't have eyes or ears,
Yeah.
right? The mole doesn't know that we're here. The mole doesn't know that we're setting traps for it,
Yeah.
right? It's the equivalent of that. It's just we have to lower our egos and we have to lower the level of intellect that we think we have as a species. We're not at the top, we're at the bottom of the totem pole. And the sooner we wrap our heads around that, the sooner we can progress and understand where we're going. I'm not saying that we're stupid. We got brilliant people doing brilliant things on the planet, but respectively, globally, we're a bunch of idiots. There's a lot more idiots than there are smart people. I always say that the difference is at least 80% of the world's population aren't the smartest light bulbs or the brightest light bulbs. But that's an issue, is that it's the human condition also that we have to look at. It's not just what's happening objectively, but what's happening subjectively. When the two merge together, you get a synchronicity, locks everything in together. I mean, this is why you and me do what we do, because both of them clicked in. But most people, they don't have that. They're not on the radar yet. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying. Sometimes I just babble on, but this is the important part. It's that we need to humble ourselves, especially when it comes down to this subject. I don't see that enough. Jacques Vallée, like I said, because he's humble, right? As many books as he's written, as much knowledge, everybody looks up to him. He's not Mr. Arrogant. He's like, I don't know. I don't suspend judgment. Like, he's a rarity. Like, nobody's like that. Jeremy Corbell's not like that. Stephen Greer's not like that. Like, you need to be humble and understand that we don't know everything.
Yeah, that's true. We don't know, and it's going to be really exciting to see if we're going to find out. I believe we're going to find out. It's going to be really exciting. Yeah.
Hey, fingers crossed. If anybody wants to find you, Renate, where can we find you online? Where can the listeners look you up?
I guess just on Twitter. Yeah. So it's my name, Renate underline. Is that the right word?
I believe you do have an underline in there. Yeah.
And an F and an E. That's me. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll add your Twitter link to the episode description as well, so that people can find you there too. And then if they need to contact you, it's one way. But if you live in Norway, you speak English and you listen to this podcast and you want to get involved, please contact Renate or NUFOS, of course, which is spelled NUFOS. It is important that you get off the couch and that you help out. This is 2024. It's not time to be couch investigators anymore. And then going on Twitter and then saying your piece. You got to be active. You got to get out there. And this is what this podcast is all about, is to motivate myself and others to do that, what you do, of course. But I thank you so much for your time. I'm recording 2 interviews today, and I was really looking forward to this too, because I don't have a lot of people like England, France, that's one thing, but never somebody from Sweden or Norway or anything like that, right? So it's great to cover every country. I appreciate your time. Please, let's have you back on again. We are going to do some panels this year as well. It'd be great to get you on one of these panels.
Oh yeah, I like to argue. So let's get this fun topic.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.